No. Henry Daas, you are a serial entrepreneur, business and financial coach, screenwriter, avid traveler, golfer, tennis player, and now author of FQ, Financial Intelligence, where you take people from beginning to end and teach everything in between. Henry, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
So, Henry, I was surprised by this book because, as I mentioned in the intro, you are a screenwriter, and it comes true. So it comes as people consider money to be a dry subject. Not me, but people in general.
People do.
Consider it to be, but you make it interesting. The style and the sarcasm comes through in every other page, so it keeps people on their toes, and it's very enjoyable reading. And I was also surprised that you start from the beginning, the history of money from, I don't know, what is it, 50,000 years ago, or however long it was.
Paper money is maybe 4,000 years ago in China.
Yeah, but before that, the coins and all this onto our day.
I did a lot of research.
Well, it did show. Anyway, so enough preamble. I wonder if you could tell us a little bit about your background. Who are you? How come you become interested in money?
Oh, well, I'll take the second part first. I've been interested in money since I was a kid, since I got the first, quarters from my mother after church on Sundays. So, I've got 3 kids of my own, and, they have their life is much easier than the life that I had. Not to say that I grew up poor or anything, but if I wanted money when I was a kid, I had to earn it. I cut lawns when I was 12 years old. I washed windows. I worked at a pancake house when I was 15. I've always been steeped in it. I bought my first stock when I was 17 years old, when I was still in high school. Always had that interest. But as far as my, career journey, I started as an entrepreneur 30 years ago, because I always felt that was the most expeditious path to monetary wealth. And a lot of people that I've talked to agree with me. Yeah, entrepreneurship is the road.
And what do you study?
Believe it or not, I studied electrical engineering when I was in college. So I have a degree in engineering because my parents, being depression babies, they're like, you'll always get a job if you're an engineer.
Right.
And it's true. Engineers are always in demand. So unless you want to go on to, graduate school to become a doctor or a lawyer or do all of that stuff, as far as an undergraduate degree goes, engineers get hired pretty quickly. And I got a job right out of college. I graduated in 1981. So, and I got my first job 2 weeks after I graduated. $21,000 a year I made. I thought I died and went to heaven. It was like, oh my God, it's so much money.
Well, you probably did. I mean, compared with the rest of the world population, that's a lot of money. So
yeah.
Last night I was writing an article that says that if you are a dental hygienist, you also have job security for the rest of your life. However, I don't know if that's something that people look forward to doing for the rest of their life. So entrepreneurship seems like a very nice gamble, I guess.
Well, you know what? It's funny. I actually think that working for somebody else is riskier than being an entrepreneur. I'm one of those people who believes that, you should bet on yourself.
Right.
I've been doing it pretty much my entire adult life. If I don't go out there and hustle, I don't eat. An empty belly is a great motivator, as I like to say. And, we saw it with COVID. Right? 30 million, 40 million people lost their jobs. And it's going to take years for that to come back. And that's, they worked for somebody else, which is not to say that entrepreneurs didn't get hit, but they have a lot more opportunity to pivot or do some other things. And they're kind of used to, again, working without a net. So it's not as shocking for them. Still shocking, but just not as shocking.
Okay, so you say that you bought your first stock when you were 17 years old. Can you tell us about your investing journey? Have you always been an active investor or a
Yes.
passive investor, or
No,
what
active.
interests you? Okay,
Mm.
so what have you learned along the way? What kind of active investor are you?
Well, they're basically. I'm mainly a stock trader. I'm mainly a long stock trader. So I buy stocks and I hold on to them. I like dividend paying stocks. There are really four different types of stock traders that I articulated in my book. There's the day traders. You know, this I use track and field as the analogy. Your sprinters, your Usain Bolt. Those are your day traders. Get in, get out. Right? Don't carry a trade overnight. Next thing would be a swing trader, little longer time frame. That would be more of your milers, right? And then I'm a position trader, which is the next group. Those are more of your 10K. So I'll buy something that I like and I'll hold it for, weeks, months, sometimes years, as long as it's performing. I'm not looking for a quick get in and get out, and I take profits. I have a saying. I say take profits when they present themselves. So, for instance, I've owned Apple for many, many years, but I've taken profits on it. Usually once a year, I'll take profits on it, and put that cash in my pocket. And then the last group are the so-called buy and hold people, who hold the thing forever, buy a stock and hold it for 50 years. Your marathoners. Um, I'm not really that. I'm more of a position trader, but I will scalp trade from time to time if I see something lands on my lap and I think I can make a quick profit. But I don't jump in on things like GameStop, which has been going crazy. And I run a mastermind group, and we've been talking about it and we've been analyzing it. And one of the guys in the group said, "Yeah, I jumped in on it, and I made about $5,000 in an afternoon." I said,
Wow.
"Oh, all right." But I guarantee you there's folks out there who lost $5,000 in an
Yeah, of
afternoon.
course, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you can consider that as a consumption money as opposed to investment money. The kind of money.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, that's walking around cash, right?
Okay,
That's not a part of your nest egg per se. But again, I think all money is fungible, as I say to my wife all the time. That means I talked about it in my book. We have mental bank accounts, but the reality is a dollar's a dollar. It doesn't really matter kind of where it came from or where it lives. Um, I've had people tell me that, what, I like to take my initial investment out on a stock that's gone up, right? Because that way I feel like I'm playing with the house's money. And then I tell people, you are the house. It's all your money.
right,
Whether
right.
you made it or whether you made it somewhere else and then invested it, it's all your money. That's a mental bank account. If that makes you feel better, great. I don't really aspire to that at all. To me, that doesn't make sense.
But it does make sense for some people. They have to have this compartment
Yeah,
in their mind, and
they
if
do.
they don't have it, they just break apart and they just cannot follow whatever plan or idea or system that they have in mind. So they have to have this is my spending bucket, this is my investment bucket, this is my play money bucket,
Right.
and that's how it is. They can even contradict themselves. That means being long in one bucket and then being short in
Yeah, they can be. So my approach is it's all just one big pile of money. If you want to logically break it up that way, that's fine. But it's like moving money from your left pocket to your right pocket. I mean, it's still in your pockets.
right.
It
So
seems pretty simple. I talk a lot about risk. So if that helps you manage your risk a little bit, you say, "Oh, I put this money aside and I'm never going to touch it." Right? So that's, low risk. Okay, that's one way to do it. Look, truth is, whatever works for you. I wrote the book because this is what worked for me, and I think I've done okay.
Okay, so as I was looking into your profile, I see that you're a business coach and also an investment coach. Can
Yes.
you give us a sense of how that works? Especially, well, both sides are interesting. Let's start with the investment coach. You tell people how to invest. Is that what
No,
it
I
is?
teach them how to do it themselves. So I teach a course. So I wrote this book as a course, 18 modules over 20 weeks. I will teach it to you one-on-one. I tested it with a dozen people. And I was about to launch it. And then folks said, you should turn it into a book to make that your lead magnet because people don't know who you are. And it made a lot of sense, although it was a huge job to turn it into a book. It took me like a year to do that. Um, so you can just read the book. I give the book away for free. I have it right on my landing page. If you go to www.daas knowledge, DAAS knowledge, you can go on the FQ tab and download it for free. I mean, I have it on BookBaby. I have it on Amazon. But Bezos is the only one who makes money from books. I just want people to read it. And if you can read it, and that's good enough for you to learn a bunch of things, great. But if you really want to master it, I'll teach it to you one-on-one. And I'm a professionally trained coach. Um, so why not learn it from the master?
Okay, so you go from A to Z. I mean, this is how you open an account. This is how you choose whatever you're going to invest on. Is that what you do?
Well, I actually wrote it. You talked about a screenplay. I actually have them as three chapter um, acts, right? As a screenwriter, we write in the 3-act structure. So the first act is the psychology of money and looking at what it is you have, figuring out your personal net worth, looking at doing a deep dive into your expenses, all the mechanical nuts and bolts stuff of where you are. Most people don't do that. Most people, if you ask them what's your net worth, they have no idea. And they don't even know how to figure it out. They're not even thinking about what we call in the business world contingent liabilities. What does that mean? That means you got to look into the future. You know, if you've got 3 kids, I talk about it in my book. I spend $600,000 after tax money to pay for my kids' tuition to go through school, instead of saddling them with huge student loans. One of our goals was to make sure that they graduated without any debt. That's not easy to do. That took a lot of planning. We started that by putting money away from them the day they got a social security number, right? When they were a month old. That takes a lot of foresight. You want to retire. Think about it. When do you want to retire? How much money is that going to cost? So there are a lot of things that are looming out in the distance that people are not considering right now. So that's where I start. Then in the middle is where I talk about investments, bonds and real estate and currency and stocks and all of that stuff and accounts. Like here in the US, we have all these tax deferred accounts, different things like that. And then in the third act, I talk about all the other things, death and dying, all the bear traps that are out there for people trying to steal your money, all sorts of different stuff. And then I ended my 18th chapter is just all the odds and ends of little things that didn't really fit neatly into the other chapters. So it's meant to be a journey from pretty much the day you're born until the day you die.
Wow. Okay. And how about um, so this was a course, and you have been coaching people. What inspired you to become a coach?
You know what?
Because that's a tough business as well.
It's a very tough business because there are no barriers to entry to being a coach. Anybody could be a coach. Anybody listening to this podcast tomorrow could pick something that they're good at and be a coach.
They can pick
Right?
up your book and start teaching.
Yeah, they can pick up my book and start coaching on my book. Go ahead, please. I want 10% or maybe 15%. So that means it's very, very easy to go into that business. I was always coaching people informally anyway, as I went through my various entrepreneurial companies. I have 3 boys. I've coached like 40 sports teams in baseball, basketball, football, lacrosse, and soccer or football, right? European football. So it's just kind of a gift that I have. And I decided I really wanted to parlay that and see if I could turn that into a real business. So I coach, so I started by coaching entrepreneurs about 10 years ago. So I coach entrepreneurs one-on-one. I share my business experience with them. I'm a little bit of a coach. I'm a little bit of a mentor. I'm a little bit of a cheerleader. I call myself a coach approach strategic advisor, as a way to differentiate myself from just the regular business coaches that are out there. And the big differentiator for me is I've been an entrepreneur for most of my adult life, where there's a lot of coaches who've never run any business other than their coaching business.
Yeah, that's good. And I at a moment, it feels like the business of coaching, the big part of the work is the self-promotion. It feels like coaches spend so much of their time doing that self-promotion and very little actual coaching.
I don't do enough self-promotion, and I do a lot of coaching. It's kind of my Achilles heel. I mean, this whole podcast thing was something that I started during the lockdown because I had extra time on my hands. So I've done maybe 65 podcasts in the last 10 months. And I enjoy it. It's an opportunity to come out and, talk about the stuff that I do. And it's fun.
So going back to your book, if you were going to share, if there were three pieces of information you would like the listeners to go away with, what would they be?
Okay. Great thing. Number one is risk, what I talked about. There's risk lurking everywhere. You need to assess that. Stop looking at just the return on investment and look at the risk-adjusted return on investment, because something that may have a great return on investment might be incredibly risky. And if you're a risk-averse person, so this would be number two, are you a risk-averse person? I would say that probably 8 out of 10 people live in scarcity, right? So there's two goalposts. There's scarcity and there's abundance. You want to live somewhere in the middle of that. There's a time for scarcity and there's a time for abundance, but basically you kind of want to live in the middle. I know people who live totally in scarcity. They're never willing to take any risk, so they never get any kind of return, right? Then you've got other people who are like, oh, I want to jump on the GameStop bandwagon, or I want to do this or whatever. And then they go in and they get their lunch taken away from them. Which brings me to the third point, which is you got to study this and you have to learn how these markets work. There are no shortcuts. I don't care what people are telling you. I will not tell you that. I'm a 61-year-old baby boom school. I will give you a message that people hate. This is hard work. You're going to have to study and you're going to have to take your lumps, right? I've been stock trading. I can say it. I said it in my book. I have taken, millions of dollars out of the market. But I tell you what, when I lose $500 on a trade because I did something stupid, that will stay with me much longer than making $50,000, on a big position trade that I did really, really well. That's pleasure pain principle, right?
Right. And how does a person determine what's their risk tolerance? Most people...
Well, that's something that we work on one-on-one with people, and I'll give them some exercises to do and some examples. And, we'll just go through some made-up scenarios and get a sense for which one is more appealing to you, right? What happens if this happens? How are you going to react?
One thing that I found out when you do this kind of scenario is that when you ask this question to a person face to face, they are all risk tolerance. Yeah, I can take a 20% hit, no problem. And then when things come to fruition, a 5% risk, they are just freaking out.
They freak out.
You probably at 3 o'clock in the morning telling you about their nightmares and how they're going to lose their houses. So how do
No,
you actually determine someone's risk tolerance?
again, I talked about it. I'm a golfer, right? You mentioned that at the beginning. I go to the driving range when the weather's nice. Maybe 2 or 3 times a week to practice stuff. There's stuff I'll do on the driving range that I would never consider doing on the course, right? You can paper trade, right? People talk about, well, you should paper trade. Trade with funny money. If anybody's ever been to a casino night where you're playing with funny money for charity, and I've been to a lot of them, people are going crazy. That is not what you would do if you were in Vegas when it was real money, right? Paper trading is for learning the mechanics of how to trade. But until you're in the pressure cooker, you don't know. So I agree with you. It's tough. People are going to try to bullshit me. Let's put it that way. As a professional coach, even in a business arrangement with entrepreneurs, they're going to try to bullshit me. But after a while, I learn about people, and I'm like, yeah, you say that, but that's not true.
Right.
You're trying to tell me something that I want to hear. That's my job, to discern whether you're really being honest with yourself or not.
Right. Okay. And your third point was to study. You had to study. There's no shortcuts to this. There's not just looking at Kramer at 6 o'clock in the news and just following his advice.
No. In fact, I tell people, do not watch any, I call that trader porn, right? Exactly. Do not watch Bloomberg. Do not watch MSNBC. I used to. Again, I wrote it in a book. I used to have it on, and I botched a trade because of something I heard on that show. This is years ago. I listened to him. I said, yeah, that makes sense. And then the trade reversed on me. I didn't follow my instruments, right? It's like flying a plane. Follow your instruments or you're going to hit the side of a mountain. And from that day on, I turned it off. I'll listen to music if I'm doing a trading session. I do not listen to that. I have trusted sources. I tell people, cultivate trusted sources, whether it be the Wall Street Journal or Barron's or Seeking Alpha. I have a number that I pay for. I belong to a group called Spike Trade, which is all professional traders. And I mentioned it in the book. Alex Elder, who runs it, is kind of a friend and a mentor of mine. These things cost money, but this is where the professionals hang out. These are the people you want to hang out with. These are not people who are chasing rainbows. These are folks who are doing the work, and when they screw up, like with Spike Trade, if you have a bad beat, you actually have to put it on the site and explain what you did wrong, so that people can learn from it.
Okay, so you suggest to learn from just being aware of what's happening in the market day to day. Is that
every day? I start my day by doing market homework. I outlined that in my book. What I look at: the futures, gold, currencies, Baltic Dry Index, all these crazy things. It takes me 5 minutes to go through it. I track it in a database, but it gives me like a sense of the pulse of the market.
Right.
I'm watching stocks and bonds, all day long, out of the corner of my eye.
Yeah. There's just one thing. Let's say a publication like Seeking Alpha, they, as far as I know, they pay writers by the amount of views that the articles get.
They sure do.
They sometimes, I have the feeling, try to sensationalize their headlines and the articles itself in order to get views and of course get paid from that. So I find it sometimes skeptical, trying to figure out, is this writer trying to get views so he can get paid for views, or is his point of view is legit?
Well, yeah, of course. You've got to vet it, right? First of all, they want to have a sensational headline because that's going to grab your eyeballs, right? It's clickbait. They want you to. Most of them have some skin in the game, although they should tell you whether they're actually holding a position. Right. So if you watch, at least it used to be, if you watch CNBC, that they would put a little bumper slide up there that said whether they were actually long or short on the stock. So you have to take it all with a grain of salt and do your own homework. But they'll cover stocks that you may not have been aware of. Like,
Right.
I'll give you an example. I'd never heard of Lululemon until many, many years ago, when Jim Cramer covered Lululemon, and I had no idea who it was. And I asked my wife, and she's like, "Don't be a dummy. You know, they're a women's clothing company." And then I started doing my research on them. And then I put on a trade and I made a bunch of money with them for a couple of years. I haven't traded them in a long, long time. I never would have heard of them if I hadn't, in that particular case, seen it on Cramer. But it's the same thing with these, Market Watch or such and such. There are companies out there that are just not on my radar.
Right.
I have no idea. So it gets it on my radar, but I'm not taking that guy's word for it. I'm with you 100%. The guy at Seeking Alpha, he may be doing an old-fashioned pump and dump. I have no idea. But it's easy enough to go dig a little bit deeper and get the real financial information. Now, it depends on whether you are a fundamental trader, which is another thing I talk about in my book, or a technical trader. I'm both.
Right.
I grew up as a fundamental trader, looking at free cash flow and PEG ratios and all that stuff to determine the value of a stock. The problem is that the market, there's an old saying, John Maynard Keynes says, the market can be wrong longer than you can be solvent.
Right.
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 So I use the charts to get my buy and sell points, right? To get my entries and my exits, because the chart will tell you pretty much everything you know. But I still want to know about the fundamentals of a company.
Right. And I assume as people will get to read your book, and let's say they get interested or they start dipping their toes into the investment universe, maybe at the beginning they could be failures, and then with time they gain more confidence, and let's say I don't know, 2, 3, 5 years from now, then they know more or less what they're doing as opposed to the first run or the first read of your book.
Yeah, exactly. It takes time for you to build up a trading style.
Right.
So I have friends who are counter trend traders, right? They're contrarians. So they're looking for bullish or bearish divergences, right? Other folks like myself, that we follow the theory that the trend is your friend. I'm not going to buck the trend. So if the trend is up, I'm going long. Right. And if the trend is down, I'm going short. And if the trend is undefined, I'm going fishing, right? I'm just not going to be involved in it. That takes time to learn. But the whole thing is, while you're learning, you don't want to blow up your account.
Right.
Because I know I used to be in an options trading group many, many years ago, and we had a little, chat board and such. And over the course of time, people were dropping off. And I'm like, why are people dropping off? And it's like, dude, they're broke.
Yeah.
They blew their accounts up and they're not trading anymore. It's like, well, that's dumb. I mean, we don't want to do that. So I talk about rules, keeping your powder dry. You are going to make bad trades. Everybody from Warren Buffett on down have made bad trades. It's part of the deal. But the truth is, you only need to make one more good trade than bad trade and you'll make money.
Right. So you're big on risk management.
Sure.
You manage, you bet your trades are a certain amount of size, not 100% of your portfolio. And
I use the 2%, 6% rule. So nice. I'm glad that you mentioned that, which basically means if you have $1 million portfolio, let's say you've got $1 million allocated towards stock, any individual position, you don't want to be less than 2% or 20,000 or more than 6%, which is 60,000. So I mentioned earlier how I've taken profits on Apple. And one of the reasons is that Apple will constantly bump up against that 6% number. Now, it doesn't mean as soon as it gets to 6%, you have to sell it. You get a feel for it. But when it starts getting overweight in your portfolio, take some profits.
Right. Amazing. This is
nobody
great.
Ever went broke taking a profit. That was Bernard Baruch who said that. And it's absolutely true. I see people they sell their winners and they double down on their losers. It's like, no. Losers are losers for a reason. Get rid of your losers. They're cancer for your portfolio. And, put more money into your winners, right? That's just seems like common sense, right? But it's amazing how many folks, and I've done trade rehab. I've actually gone through and had a real loser, and I'm like, I'm gonna make this a winner, even if it kills me.
Right.
Right? You don't want to do that, especially early on.
Right. Well, this is amazing stuff. Henry, can you tell us one more time the title of your book and where can people find it? And you also mentioned that they could get it for free if
they can
listen carefully.
So so my website is www.daas knowledge, DAAS knowledge. If you go on that and click the tab that says FQ, the book is called FQ, Financial Intelligence. And FQ is basically, if IQ is intelligence and EQ is emotional intelligence, then FQ is financial intelligence, right? I thought it was very unique and interesting until I Googled it, and it's like, okay, it was already invented. So, but I like the title. And it's better than financial literacy. Literacy is the ability to read and write, but intelligence is to take those skills and do something with it, like maybe make some money.
Right. Okay. Well, thank you so much, Henry, for your time. This has been an amazing conversation.
Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.